It doesn't matter whether it's Jerome Powell or Kevin Walsh as the Federal Reserve Chair. On a longer term horizon, the US dollar is set to decline, and I'll tell you why. See, we know that the US economy is about $30 trillion in size and they have $38 trillion of debt. Recently, they've been adding $2.5 trillion to their debt annually, and interest cost alone is approaching $1 trillion. Now, you must know that the government is spending approximately $7 trillion, whereas they're collecting $5 trillion in taxes. So, you have a significant deficit there. Now, forget about reducing the debt. Even to stop the debt from getting worse, the US would have to grow by 8% in terms of nominal GDP. That translates to a 5% kind of an inflation with 2-3% real growth. At this point, the Fed's target of 2% inflation will become irrelevant. So, what can Walsh or Powell even do? The truth is, whatever they do, both things lead to the same place. The first path, the Fed fights the inflation, which is the Jerome Powell way. So you keep interest cost elevated, which will reduce inflation. But if interest cost is elevated, that means cost of borrowing will be higher for businesses. That means growth will slow down, markets will fall. Ultimately, you will have a lower tax collection, which will widen the deficit. Now, if deficit widens, your bond yield will begin to rise. If bond yield rises, then the dollar will begin to shake. So the Fed will only be left with two options in this case. You either print more money or you default. Default is obviously never an option, so you print more money. If you print more money, the dollar will lose value. Second path, the Fed fights the debt. This is what Donald Trump and Kevin Walsh want. Now, this is also why tariffs were introduced in the first place, but any which way, coming back, to fight the debt, you will have to reduce interest costs. If you reduce interest costs, inflation will go up. Now, your reduced interest cost and higher inflation environment will push your GDP growth. That is there. And debt will look manageable on paper. But because it is an high inflationary environment, your dollar will continue to weaken in the background. So, either which way, the decline for the dollar is set to happen. So now the real question is, what can you and I do? This is precisely why everybody should have some exposure to gold. It is not to be looked as a speculative bet, as a trade, or even as an investment. It is a permanent hedge to your portfolio against any uncertainty or such currency erosions that will come up. And that is why Ray Dalio also once said, if you don't own some gold, you don't understand economics or history. The path for the dollar might be gradual and volatile and very slow, but it is set to happen. I hope this helps.